Hey folks, it's another episode of Buzzworthy Chit Chat. I am Lexi Mahari, and in this episode, I am here today to talk a little bit about the Sex and the City reboot, also known as And Just Like That. The series is now streaming on HBO Max, and thus far, at the time of this recording, there are now 3 episodes posted. But there is so much to unpack as it relates to the series itself. First of all, we can't ignore the elephant in the room at this point, right? We have a character portrayed by Kim Cattrall, known as one Samantha Jones, who is no longer on the series. She's no longer a part of the cast. If you have followed this cast throughout the years, you are very familiar with, I think, some of the challenges that have come up along the way of continuing what started out as a series in 1998 and concluded in 2004, and eventually, turned into 2 movies. We have Kim Cattrall, who really no longer has any interest in portraying that character, and she has verbalized this more than once. In fact, and as I understand it, allegedly the reason why the 3rd movie never happened is that Kim Cattrall no longer had any interest in portraying the character Samantha Jones. In addition to that, she was not thrilled by the plot or the manuscript perhaps that she was given. One of those reasons being what we saw unfold in the first episode, and we'll talk more about that in a moment. But yes, folks, as I'm sure you have heard by now, and if not, if this is all news to you, yes, our Samantha Jones is no longer a part of the cast at this point. However, the writers have done an excellent job identifying what has transpired. And they did so head on within the first 5 to 10 minutes of the first episode. And that is that Samantha Jones and Carrie Bradshaw had a falling out. She's living in London. She no longer really has contact with Carrie because Carrie made the decision to end their business relationship. For those of you who followed the series, you might recall that Samantha was Carrie's publicist and she, helped her with her books, promoting her books and such. But in this new era, the Carrie character has identified that, books are not happening the way they were, back in the 90s and throughout the early millennium. Podcasting is where she is, right? So, which I thought was genius because, of course, I think if there was an evolution of Carrie Bradshaw, of course, she would naturally grow into that space and do some podcasting or even potentially some vlogging, So I thought that was an excellent transition of the Carrie character. But yes, we find out that Samantha Jones has, basically left the United States. And she not only is no longer in contact with Carrie Bradshaw, but she is no longer in contact with Charlotte, nor is she engaging with Miranda at this point either, which is an interesting plot that I'll talk more about in just a moment. However, we continue to see these 3 ladies interact with one another. Great comical interaction, banter, also real life type of things, conversations that they address head on. Another thing that I think the writers of this storyline did amazingly well was to continue to address the Samantha Jones situation. While they are not beating us, the viewer, the fan, over the head with the fact that she is no longer a part of the cast, they're also being careful not to ignore that she's not there by mentioning her periodically as these things happen, as events come up, as things that you can't help but to think about what would Samantha do, what would Samantha say, how would she be there to support these 3 ladies in each of their lives. They smartly interject little pieces so that you don't feel or miss her as much. You do miss her, of course. We miss, the Samantha lines and Samantha's life, but you still have some acknowledgement of her and her impact within the relationship of these 4 women. So, another great thing, the 4 guys are back for this season. Obviously, later on, I suspect we will lose Willie Garson. Of course, he unfortunately passed away in real life, so to speak. From cancer. So at some point they will have to address that. But meanwhile, we are reintroduced to the guys that helped to make this series famous. Additionally, we get to meet or see, I should say, where the children of the cast are at this point in time. The last time we saw them, most of them were either one of them was a toddler and the others were school age, right? So here we've got Brady, who is a 17-year-old, and we have Charlotte's girls who are also in their teenage years. So it's a real excellent transition of events that kind of brings us right up to where things are in modern times. Another fabulous addition to the show, of course, is the diversity, right? The big thing that the Sex and the City show itself was recently criticized for, as well as other shows. But it seems that the writers have addressed that head on, and I am looking forward to seeing more of these ladies in future episodes. The great thing that they are doing so far is that they are slowly integrating them. Yeah, that's the word I'm going to use, integrating. They are slowly integrating these folks into the storylines. Although I didn't really see them, I don't think I saw them in episode 3. They were obviously heavily present, at least two of the ladies were heavily present in the first 2 episodes. And so I am looking forward to seeing more of the cast as the remaining episodes unfold. Unfortunately, for a lot of the fans of the Big and Carrie relationship, yes, there is the infamous Peloton death scene that occurs. Now, I don't want to blame Peloton for Big's death. If you're paying attention to the opening um, scenes, I won't say opening scenes, but the scenes throughout episode 1, it's very clear that, John Preston is not leading a healthy lifestyle. And there's just these little Easter eggs that they're leaving out there, right? He's smoking cigars, he's drinking, his diet may not be the best. And so he's now engaging in this fitness regimen on Peloton, which we know is fairly intense, right? And you have to question if it's the wisest thing for him to be doing. But yep, he's doing it. And unfortunately, yes, Big does have a heart attack, which brings me back to the Kim Cattrall exit. One of the rumors that was out there years ago when there was chatter about the potential for a third Sex and the City movie was the fact that we might lose the Big character. One of the reasons she allegedly did not wish to proceed with it was that there was the plan that the Big character would die off. Now, I don't know if Kim Cattrall cared that much about the script or the story itself. Maybe she did. And then, of course, as they were preparing to release the reboot, there were rumors once again that, Big was going to have a heart attack and he was going to die. And probably in a future video, I will talk more about why I think it was actually a good idea to do it. Probably not the most popular thing to do for the Big Carrie fans, but I think for Carrie's character to continue to flourish and bring us the storylines we need, we couldn't really have Big in the picture. So it was either divorce or death, right? And we've already been down the breakup road many, many times with these characters. So I think death made the most sense. So, my question is, do we miss Samantha Jones? How are you guys feeling about her absence at this point in time? Leave your comments down below. I'm going to share with you my thoughts on Samantha Jones. Am I missing the Samantha Jones character? Absolutely. Absolutely, I miss Samantha Jones. However, I really appreciate what they have done so far with her character's absence, and that is to continue to mention her. It just, unless they kill her off later on in the series from coronavirus, which, apparently they did kill one of the other characters off that we were familiar with, unless that's what happens to her, from afar, the door is definitely open, should they decide to continue this series beyond the 10 episodes, which I really hope they do. This is great. It's a great series so far. Um, so yeah, we miss Samantha Jones. Of course we do. But I think that um, the writers so far are doing a great job to not try to make us forget Samantha Jones. And her character, though she is not there to portray it, the Samantha Jones character is an intricate part of the show. And so those moments where we might think about what would Samantha say, what would Samantha do, they bring those things in there. In episode 3, there is a scene where Charlotte coordinates a lunch for the girls, meaning for herself and Miranda and Carrie. and Stanford shows up. Stanford has become like the fill-in. I like to call him the backfill for Samantha. He's not a replacement, but he's been an interesting backfill. Think about on the job when someone quits their job and they have to hire someone. It's not that this person who comes in is better than the person who was there. Of course, they can never replace them, but they might be a good stand-in, right? So the Stanford character has had some interesting moments already for me in the first two episodes. I particularly thought he was hilarious in episode two. Um, so anyway, he in episode three he accompanies, or he shows up, I should say, at the restaurant where they're having lunch, and Charlotte makes reference to Samantha. She says, I had to choose a place that would not remind Carrie of Big or Samantha. So I thought that was a brilliant thing to do, because we always know that the four ladies always came together to have breakfast or to have lunch to talk about whatever thing was going on in their life, whether it was just updating each other about what had transpired or trying to navigate traumatic situations. Like for Carrie, it would be the death of Big. And in this episode, finding out that Big had left Natasha $1 million, right? So I think that, it would be great if Kim Cattrall decided to come back. I don't know that she will. I would be shocked if she did, given everything that she has said and or everything that has transpired online between her and Sarah Jessica Parker. I don't know that she would come back at this point. But I think if they continue in this vein, we won't miss her as much. And I think that the cast of characters that they have brought on, clearly we needed more than one person to replace her, right? If we're going to use that word replace, I think there's going to be enough going on with them that we won't miss her as much at times, right? Except for big events, and pardon the pun, such as the death of Big, right? Those are the times when you might miss Samantha Jones. But I think meanwhile, as other things unfold, we're not going to miss her as much because there's going to be so much other stuff unfolding. For those of you who may be struggling with the Samantha Jones exit or Kim Cattrall exit, I would just say this, think of it this way, particularly for those of you who are of a particular age. And when I say a particular age, I would say 30 and older, because hopefully by 30 you figure this out. The likelihood of you retaining the friends that you had in your 20s is very rare. Now, I am lucky. I feel lucky that, out of the 5 people I called my friends back when I was 21 years old, there's maybe 2 that are still my friend at this point, and I'm nowhere near 20 anymore. So, you kind of have to think of it this way. Everything has a season. This is a cliche statement, but as you get older, you grow to really appreciate the meaning behind this. People come in and out of your lives. And I think the Samantha Jones situation on And Just Like That is a great example of how that can happen. These people that you share your deepest secrets with, who are there for you in the good and bad times, occasionally drift right out of your lives, and it just happens. Sometimes it's within your span of control and sometimes it's not. And so I think this is just another great aspect of the show that I hope they continue to really address without overdoing it in the next few episodes. So those are my thoughts. Let me know yours. Do you miss Samantha Jones? Post that down below in the comments. I'd love to hear from you.